So for our first speaker and for our first presentation, is it worth it? Inventory and maintenance of museum collections. Our speaker for today is Mr. John Dexter D.F. Lumibao. He is a senior museum specialist at the UPLB Museum of Natural History. So for our speaker, Mr. John Dexter Lumibao is a senior museum specialist at the UPLB Museum of Natural History. He finished his bachelor's degree in biology at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, majoring in wildlife biology. He is also a project staff of the BIFA project entitled Digitization, Georeferencing, and Mobilization of Philippine Chiroptera and Associated Ectoparasites and Pathogens from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños Museum of Natural History. So without further ado, let me call Mr. John Dexter Lumibao to start his presentation.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Julian and Ichan, for your introduction. Let me share my screen. All right. So again, I'm John Dexter Lumibao, current senior museum specialist at the UPLB Museum of Natural History. And I'm here to talk about my current progress in the inventory of one of our museum collections, the DS Report collection. How is it maintained? And we're going to answer at the end of this presentation, is it worth it? So before we start, a brief background of the Museum of Natural History, its history and significance. So since 1976, the museum has explored the natural heritage of the Philippines with various institutions and collaborations. It has become a repository of collections that ranges from microbial cultures to a hortorium that houses native and endemic plant species maintained by our own museum staff. Roughly 620,000 specimens are stored and looked after in our museum's repositories. That includes collections of noted conservationists and scientists such as Dr. Edwin Copeland, Dr. Charles Fuller Baker, and Dr. Discora Moore. Not just that, it also houses our new series of collections from the museum's current researchers and curators such as Dr. Amy Lynn Marion Dupo, Dr. Ireneo Lit Jr., Dr. Juan Carlos Gonzalez, and Dr. Edwino Fernando, to name a few. Now, we move on to its mission and vision is to be globally recognized as a repository of natural heritage, be known as a center for research and information in conservation biology. This is also to explore and curate the natural history of the Philippines, that to generate and share knowledge of the Philippines flora and fauna, and after that, to hopefully to strengthen the protection and conservation of the country's biodiversity and environment. The museum's goals are to modernize its facilities and equipment through renovations, acquisitions, and replacement of the current building and equipment. A transparency program is to be created with a standard operating system for the staff and curators and visitors alike. Another goal is to pursue linkages and networks through local and international institutions and organizations with improvement in online services, standardized collection databases that includes an archival system. Lastly, we hope to promote the museum through publications, online avenues, and a new interactive website. Now, we move on to what it is I will do, and what I'm currently doing as a senior museum specialist in the University of the Philippines Museum of Natural History. My role and responsibility is to complete the inventory of specimens in our 7 different collection sections, as well as to maintain our museum catalogs as I keep track of our museum's holdings. One more thing is to care for museum possessions by monitoring the room's conditions, the specimens conditions, and the general housekeeping by basically looking after our specimens, cleaning their storage trays or cabinets or containers. Also, one of my roles is to manage museum acquisitions, whether to be a point of contact for donations, purchases, or repatriation of specimens that are not within our country or in our possession right now. Also, one of my responsibilities is hopefully to create or update the current museum database of collections. Now, For my other objectives and as a museum specialist is hopefully to update our tags on specimens if necessary. This is because we have specimens we have that with damaged tags, mislabeled tags, or there are certain information such as localities that needs to be updated. If possible, I hope to implement a barcode system or a centralized accessioning or cataloging system that will be used throughout the Museum of Natural History. Also, I think this is one thing to be discussed by our staff, our curators, is that the accessioning of damaged specimens or specimens to be used only for teaching purposes. I will explain later why this needs to be done or what serves to be the accessioning specimen. Now, we move on to what I've been doing or where I've been working on in these past 5 months, the D.S. Robor Memorial Wildlife Museum. Now, these are just a few snippets of me guiding our visitors through the collection of Dr. Robor. As you can see in the middle one, what we've been doing is cleaning and checking the specimens data if it coincides with the database that we're currently updating. With me there is our CIP fellow, Francis Tenorio, and sometimes we have our volunteers that help us do our job in order for us to have it maintained, clean, so on. Now, there have been multiple visitors from different universities and institutions in order for them also to understand what their interns and volunteers are doing and what they are going to do. So as you can see here, we have visitors from the Manila Central University as their interns work in the Museum of Natural History. I think this was in July or August. Below the bottom half of this slide, you can see the organized specimens with the respective catalog numbers written here with on the paper wrapped on them. For me or for us, this is just a stopgap measure to ensure that whenever someone asks for a specific specimen or whenever someone asks for a certain bird or a mammal here, we can easily locate it without going through all of the specimens. If I may speak in Tagalog, para lang hindi siya magulo and para hindi rin makalkal yung mga specimens para hindi mahirap hanapin. Right? So here is our current findings and updates. As of today, there are over 10,428 bird specimens here in the D.S. Robor collection and 4,460 mammalian specimens that are included. 98% of the bird specimens have been accounted for, with the remaining 2% yet to be checked, cleaned, updated, and unfortunately, there are certain specimens that are possibly out of our collection room. 1,250 specimens of our mammalian skins have been digitized under the current project of the UPLB MNH in collaboration with the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, or GBIF. Now, this is an interesting, the next information is interesting because there are two possibly extinct birds that are stored here in the collection room right now. This is where I'm at right now. So the two birds are possibly extinct are the Cebu subspecies of the Philippine hanging parrot Loritullus philippensis chrysonotus and the Negro subspecies of the celestial monarch Hypothemis celestis robori. So you can see it later here. So as shown on the left is our Philippine hanging parrot with the chrysonotus subspecies and the Hypothemis celestis robori, celestial monarch with the robori subspecies. Now, I would discuss further that this celestial monarch that we have here, the robori subspecies, we only have two specimens, one of which is shown here and one of which actually we're still looking for. As you can see here, the celestial monarch that we have here has a damaged beak, and this is crucial to us that we have to check each and every specimen that we're looking at is to check its status, its current condition. And I think, or what I've read, is that we have the celestial monarchs that we have here, or the Rabori subspecies of the celestial monarch that we have here, is the last two specimens that were collected by Dr. Rabor himself at Basay Bayawan, Negros Oriental. So hopefully in the future, or in the following months or years, we'll be able to have a special lockbox for whatever specimen that we have that are possibly extinct, critically endangered, or undergoing a thorough checking of their condition. So next would be a report on the condition of our specimens. So 12.8% of the bird specimens have significant damage, which includes detached body parts, the shedding of feathers, possibly from molds, specimen deterioration, or pest infestation. As you can see here, there are specimens that has cockroach eggs attached on them. There are specimens that have damaged feathers, body parts, and even their tags. As you can see here, sometimes there are body parts that are missing. We don't know if it was missing back then. We're trying to understand, or the timeline that was that the specimens were brought here. And as you can see in this third picture, this is you can see body parts of our specimens just there, without tags, without certain information. So we hope that we'll find whichever bird it's supposed to be attached to, whichever tag it's supposed to be attached to, and hopefully update again our database. So for the next slide, we have to show also the progress of the other museum sections. Shown here is a botanical herbarium inventory that has roughly 75,000 specimens as of September 2022. So as you can see on their table, the bryophytes, they have almost 10,000 specimens. For pteridophytes, 3,000 specimens, and for seed plants at 62,000 specimens. So as you can see here, the numbers that they were currently digitized, and the specimens that are imaged by their respective technicians and researchers. So for the next collection section is the forestry and wood herbarium. We have 65.41% of the 14,670 specimens inventoried in database. For the mycological section, 70% already has been accessioned and digitized, with 16% currently inventory. For the entomological collection, we have roughly 370,000 specimens, with 2,226 specimen boxes from class Insecta alone inventory from the start of 2015. There are also 4,200 Lepidopteran specimens encoded. I think this was done this past decade. And with the microbial culture collections, roughly 2,000 culture collections are part of our holdings. Now, to answer, is it worth it? Is it worth it for us to maintain and properly inventory our collections, our specimens, our holdings? Yes, it is worth it. From my perspective alone, looking after these specimens are essential, as these collections tell us a story of how rich our country's biodiversity was in the past century alone. Our specimens are there are specimens that were collected in the early 1900s up to this date. So it's a whole century and 2 decades. Also, heritage collections should be looked in honor of the sacrifices and studies that were made by our scientists and researchers. Even with published data, there is still a likelihood that we're going to have new studies published by these old specimens. Now, there are studies that before They are looking for feather lice in the collection of Dr. Rabor, and I think they were published by Dr. JC and his fellow researchers. Okay, so with that, I thank Dr. Marian De Leon, our director of the Museum of Natural History, Chancellor Jose B. Camacho, and Vice Chancellor for Research and Extension, Natalia Pantayan, the curators that are helping me throughout this process here in the Diaz Rabor collection, Dr. JC Gonzalez, Professor Philip Alviola, and Dr. Ana Pauline Teguia. Also, I thank Dr. Jennifer Niem, our coordinator for collections management, for providing us with data and possible and numbers that we presented right now. Also, I really like to thank the UPLB MNH staff and volunteers for helping me throughout this inventory process.